Just a quick disclaimer before we get this video started. This will be a long video. So make sure that you guys grab your snack, popcorn, drink, chocolate, dinner, whatever you want to indulge in during this video. Make sure you grab it, grab your blanket, whatever you need. Make sure you grab it and let's get into this video because this is going to be a longer video, and let's get this video started right now. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. We have a great article here from Inside Towers. This is a great article. Actually, I really needed this type of article for this video. This is a great detailed article with a lot of numbers. So I needed this for this article for this specific video. So this is in regards to T-Mobile and their upcoming September 18th Analyst Day. That's what it is. Let's just call it an Analyst Day. They're calling it Capital Markets Day, but what it really is, it's an Analyst Day. It will be in the same format of what we saw, or it should be very similar to what we saw in the Analyst Day in 2021. So for those of you who saw that, who witnessed that, it should be a very familiar format for you come September 18th. So it's in regards to the next, I think next 5 years or so, what they will guide and what they will show us. So how did T-Mobile get to this point, right? We want to look at T-Mobile's Capex, right? Capital allocation, Capex, post-Sprint merger, because a lot of people still seem to be confused about it. So I wanted to bring that up again as we head to the next 5 years or so, potentially long-term outlook of T-Mobile's Capex through, I would anticipate at least 2030 is what they will show us September 18th. So I just want to bring you guys back in, right? I want to rewind. I want to go back. So the original 3 to 4 year Capex guidance that they gave us at the that they were going to give us at the 2021 Analyst Day was 9 to 12 billion. That was the original 3 to 4 year post-merger integration Capex, 9 to 12 billion. We all know that ended up going up a bit higher in the second and third year, and we'll discuss that. And that's why I really needed this article, because it's a great detailed article. And then the long-term guidance through 2026, the original Capex was going to remain at 9 to 11 billion, so about a 1 billion drop. But they dropped that to 9 to 10 billion, which is what we know today, right? We know T-Mobile's Capex is 9 to 10 billion today. And they actually just recently at the second quarter earnings, they dropped it by like 100 million. So they're going to come in probably 9.3, 9.44 billion for the year. I would still assume, even though the lower range is, I think, 8.7 billion, I'm still going to assume that they come in at the high end of that because they still have a lot of work to do. So let's scroll down here and let's look at the network efficiencies yield results. Let's look at this Capex chart here. So this Capex chart is 1 year pre-merger, and then all the years after that are post-merger. So I wanted to make that clear and be very detailed in this video. So pre-Sprint, right, pre-merger, they spent 6.4 billion. So that's still a decent amount for a scrappy competitor, right? T-Mobile, They really couldn't spend the big bucks in regards to the competition. They couldn't just throw 20 billion at the network. So they had to, each and every year, they just had to, be a scrappy competitor and get better and deploy the network where it made sense for the amount of money that they had. So they clearly didn't touch the rural aspect much, right? Rural, small market, rural area as we know it today. They didn't touch that much, right? They spent most of their Capex in the metros, the urban, right? Then they started expanding out to some of the suburban areas so they could really start growing, and that's where that explosive growth came from. Now, of course, 2018, 17, 16, that Capex was a bit lower than the 6.4 billion. They started to spend that higher end Capex as they became a bigger company pre-Sprint merger, right? They were already starting to get bigger. Financials were better. So they started to spend a bit more, right? But 2015, 16 timeframe, I mean, they were in the 5 billion range, like lower 5 billion range. So they just couldn't spend as much as the competition. That's what it boils down to. And that's what they pushed throughout the Sprint merger, and then eventually they got that approved, and then post Sprint merger is where it really gets interesting, and that's where that original Capex guidance comes into play. So in 2020 they spent 11 billion. So that fits right around the original long-term guidance of 9 to 12 billion. But then in 2021, 2022, which you can see it's highlighted at the top, this is the window of the Sprint network integration, 2020, 2021, 2022. 2021, they went above 12 billion. They spent 12.3 billion. So they talked about it at the quarterly earnings that they're going to pull some of the Capex from the longer term and pull it into that network integration window because they saw opportunity to upgrade and accelerate that deployment. And that's exactly what they did. And then in 2022, Capex exploded and it went to 14 billion. I think it actually was like 13.9, but they rounded up. So they spent close to 14 billion, which again, they pulled Capex from the longer term guidance and they pulled it into that network integration window. And that's really how we got to the lower Capex guidance of the 9 to 10 billion. It's not that they didn't want to spend the 9 to 11 billion. They already spent that within the Sprint network integration window. They were very, very active and busy during these 3 years. 2020, 2021, and 2022, T-Mobile was extremely busy during that time. I still don't think people understand and realize what T-Mobile really accomplished during the first 3 years of the Sprint integration window. There was a lot of work that they got done throughout those 3 years. Right, Sprint keep sites, although they still have to do some of those, but they got majority of them done during this window. So that helped them expand the network, densify the network, and grow network in a rural footprint that they did not have. Sprint had a decent rural footprint. It wasn't massive, it wasn't huge, but they had a decent footprint. So that wasn't even overlapping coverage. That was just brand new coverage for T-Mobile and its users. So that's why T-Mobile accelerated the Capex throughout the first 3 years so they could get that anchor network ready to go, right? And that meant upgrading the T-Mobile network with N41 and all the other Sprint assets. If it needed new radios, put new radios. It was pretty much a one-touch strategy. And I would say the carrier that stuck to that the most, right, was really, I would say, Verizon and T-Mobile. The one touch, right? AT&T is going to have to climb all their sites again with Ericsson, and it's something that they created. I'm not knocking them. Maybe it will yield better results in the future for their balance sheet, but T-Mobile really stuck to that one touch. Let's get this first 3 years done. Let's get that knocked out. Let's get the network modernized. Let's get all this mid-band on air. Let's get our FWA developed and let's grow that business. And that's exactly what they did. So they brought Capex from the outer long-term years and they put that into the first 3 years of the network integration. So yes, T-Mobile is spending a lot on the network. Again, I will say it again in this video. I will point this out. There is nothing publicly to back this up. But the 21 to 22 billion that AT&T is spending and the 17 to 17 and a half that Verizon is spending, not all of that goes to the wireless network. They have other obligations on the capital allocation. They have worldwide businesses that some of that capital goes to. AT&T, a huge chunk of that goes to fiber. Same for Verizon. They probably spend, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 billion, maybe 4 billion in the Fios markets, where they're continuously expanding and having to upgrade and all that good stuff. And then the global networks that they operate, that needs capital allocation. AT&T has to spend capital allocation in Mexico. They have to spend some of their Capex. So unless something drastically changes at T-Mobile over the next few years, right? We might hear a big, huge fiber operation that T-Mobile announces September 18th. They're doing fiber a little bit, but it doesn't deviate from them still being a pure wireless play. They are still 99.9% today a pure wireless company. Even though they don't even operate the fiber. I can't even call it operating. Their they're leasing back fiber from another operator and they're doing the open access thing. So they don't own or operate any of the fiber. So they're still a pure wireless player until they actually own, operate, deploy, and have a section within the business that's pure wireline. Until that day comes, T-Mobile is still a pure wireless play, 100% pure wireless. So then we look into now the Capex with the already integrated network. You can see 23, 9.8. They probably come in lower. And for obvious reasons, right? Because a lot has changed. Throughout those years, they got Auction 108 spectrum, which helped get them more Band 41 or N41 that they don't have to deploy additional radios for. So that's a cost savings, right? Of efficiencies, as you can see, the network efficiencies. And then they got more 600 that they spent money on from Columbia Capital, from Comcast that they're currently leasing, will purchase in the future, that they were able to deploy remotely. They didn't have to touch those sites. So a lot of the groundwork was done within the first 3 years of the Sprint network integration, allowing the engineers to remotely deploy spectrum that they purchased during Auction 108. Was a lot of that work was done by deploying the radios during the first 3 years. Now the CapEx, right in the outer years or the long term, the 9 to 10 billion, that's probably what they will stay at. I was a bit torn, like 50-50, like, okay, maybe they go to 10 to 11 billion or 11 to 12 billion on the longer term guidance that we get September 18th. But just listening to them recently, public commentary, I think they stick to the 9 to 10 billion through 2030. I don't think they change drastically because they have nothing right now. As it stands, there is absolutely zero indication that they will own and operate their own fiber network. If they ever, and I mean ever, own and operate a wireline side of the business, they will have to spend more CapEx at that point. Then it gets a lot more trickier, right? That 9 to 10 billion at that point, it's just not sufficient anymore. It's not going to work. They're going to have to up 15, 16, 17. They're going to have to get to those ranges, in the billions, the 15, 16, 17 billions, to really put aside money to deploy fiber and then, still have money for the wireless network. And then possibly even more, because at that point, I think they would do fiber to the home and then fiber to the cell as well, right? But for now, if they can still get the rates that they deem favorable with the leasing model for fiber to the cell, if they can still get favorable rates, if it doesn't, if the OpEx doesn't explode much, the multi-gig backhaul, the circuits, the 10-gig circuits, whatever the case, if they can still get favorable rates, they will not shy away from doing the leasing model. They just won't. They said their CapEx and OpEx is completely flip-flopped. Right, I fully anticipate Verizon and AT&T's CapEx to be higher in the future and their OpEx to be lower. I anticipate T-Mobile CapEx to be far lower, which it is today, but their OpEx to be slightly higher. Because the fiber is going to get expensive, regardless of how you look at it. If they get favorable rates, they would just say, okay, these are favorable rates, but they're still paying more in the future than they did, say, 5 years ago. So, they can't fool us. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. So as they go to 5-gig provisioning, 10-gig circuits, as they introduce the millimeter wave for FWA, they're going to have to feed that millimeter wave with more fiber. Eventually, they will have to move towards dark fiber. They're going to pay more operations costs in the future unless they decide to deploy it themselves. Then that kind of flip-flops again. Then they will have higher CapEx, and that will drop the OpEx over time, just like what Verizon did with One Fiber MCI, right? They had heavy capital investment. They deployed, 53% of their entire grid with their owned fiber. So now the CapEx is coming down because they're completing that deployment, but the OpEx will also come down because now across half of the footprint, they no longer need a third-party fiber company for leasing. They just they're done now. They have their own fiber there. Of course, they're not going to charge themselves for their own fiber, so that operations cost is going to come down. So yeah, so that's what we're working with today. Until that changes September 18th, we will get a longer term outlook through 2030, I believe. That's when we will see additional synergies, perhaps from the US Cellular deal. We will get further revenues where they will be further share buybacks on where they think how many shares they will buy back through 2030. The first round, they came in at 60 billion, which I think that will drop too, because they're going to take some of that and invest it into fiber. And I think they will make that clear come September 18th, because they don't have the huge capex or the huge free cash flow right now to really support to just buy all these fiber players with their own money, right? So they're going to use investors' money, and they're going to say, look, investor, we're going to take some of the buybacks back. We're going to invest it into fiber, but that's going to give you a bigger return in the future. That's how they're going to sell it to the street and the market. And I think the street, the market, and the investor, they will buy it, because T-Mobile has a successful playbook. They're going to say, we're going to take the same successful wireless playbook and we're going to grow in fiber, but we're going to do it with this open access model. But we're going to have to buy stake into these JV companies and get to X amount of homes passed through 2030, and we're gonna take some of that buyback money and we're gonna purchase that. I think that's how they do it. I could be wrong, but I just don't see any other way for them to really heavily drop money into stake into JV players without significantly reducing the free cash flow or getting into more debt. So, whichever way they go, we will soon find out come September 18th. But I think they are going to take some of the buybacks and they're going to invest it into these fiber players, because T-Mobile is probably seeing huge success, right? They haven't really disclosed any numbers publicly yet, but I think the early Intrepid, the Tillmans, the pilots, all that stuff, I think they're seeing success. I think they see high penetration. I think they see high closing rates with the convergence, or bundling as they call it, with wireless and fiber, where if a customer calls and they want T-Fiber, right, in an area that's operated by Tillman, whatever, T-Mobile likely has a very high success rate of getting that customer to also bundle wireless. So that's a very, very interesting thing that we need to keep follow, and I'll keep track of that. But today, I kind of wanted to just talk about how T-Mobile got here. People are saying, T-Mobile is really still not spending enough. They're getting a lot done with the capital that they're investing. Let's not kid ourselves. T-Mobile is getting a lot done, and they will get a lot more done over the next, say, we're in 24, 6 years, right? Over the next 6 years, T-Mobile will get a ton of stuff done. They will have more sites with backup power. They will have a much more explosive footprint as we talk about small market and rural areas. And we will talk about that topic more in the future as T-Mobile crosses 20%. They consider, the way that they have it categorized in their small market and rural area category, they consider that to be 40 million of the population, of the total size of population. So that's another area where T-Mobile can grow a ton of market share. So they are in the middle of continuing to build out the network in those parts. Then when the network matures, they bring the retail distribution, and the rest is history. They just grow. They have huge success in the port-ins. The port-ins are usually in those areas 4 to 1, 5 to 1, very high. I've asked about Montana, which is a state that T-Mobile aggressively built out, and I've heard crazy port numbers to T-Mobile from Verizon and AT&T. So people are looking, they're begging for other options when you see those type of port-ins. So that's just what I wanted to talk about in this video before we head into September 18th. I just wanted to give you guys, wanted to backtrack to the original Capex of the 9 to 12 billion for the first 3 years of the merger, post-merger. And then the long term, they dropped it from 9 to 11 billion down to 9 to 10 billion. But that's because, as you can very clearly see right here, the first 3 years of the Sprint network integration, they clearly spent more capital to get that done as quickly as they can. Also, for the article part, make sure you guys check it out. There's a lot of detailed information in this article that I don't want you guys to miss out on. So make sure you guys definitely check this out. This is a very detailed article. It's an older article. I want to point that out too. It's from the beginning of the year. So I want to point that out. It's an older article before somebody puts it in the comments. But this is a very interesting time at T-Mobile. They are a successful company. They are going to get bigger. They are going to get more mature. And I will throw this in for you guys that stuck around for the end of the video. There is another price increase planned for the fourth quarter. I'm hearing this is very, very, very early on. I hear there could be another price increase coming in the fourth quarter of this year, which would be crazy, right? Because that's the big shopping season. You want to put all of your offers out into the market. You don't really want any negative PR during the fourth quarter, but that's what I'm hearing for now. I hope they delay that into the first quarter of 25. But, as I say, T-Mobile is a maturing company. They're getting to the areas that nobody thought they ever would. So like a lot of people are putting out posts like, oh, snap, T-Mobile has coverage here now where I previously visited and they didn't before. So that tells you that they're deploying, right? The deployments are happening. That means the capital is working for the company, which is driving some other numbers, right? Again, it increases their operations because they don't own their own fiber. So they have to have a third party truck roll to these sites in the middle of nowhere, bring fiber wherever it's feasible. And that increases their operations costs. Now, on a lot of these sites, they're going to try to do the microwave backhaul where they just absolutely can't get any fiber, or the negotiations are just out of control, where they're like, it's just too expensive to put fiber, so they settle with microwave backhaul, which in a lot of cases is still a decent performing area. Even if it has microwave backhaul, they can still get pings fairly low. They can still get a ton of backhaul to it, because even the microwave backhaul is also more modern now, and the dishes that are being installed are better than ever before. So it's an interesting time to be in the industry. It's getting very competitive. Right now, I still don't 100% see Verizon and AT&T really changing their direction much based on T-Mobile being competitive. Verizon is just trying to get out of a slump. So they're not really shifting to be more like T-Mobile. They're just trying to get out of a slump. They're trying to grow their consumer base again organically, and they're trying just any and everything to see what sticks. So they're still in a very strong position financially because they keep raising price. The churn doesn't really spiral out of control much, so they're okay with where they're at, right? They can continue to increase EBITDA and service revenues by just pulling the pricing lever. Their only problem is how much longer can they pull the pricing lever before T-Mobile really, really closes the network gap. And then that's a whole different topic for a whole nother video. Because what does Verizon do then? Verizon is bigger today network-wise. So there are several areas out there, a ton of areas probably, that T-Mobile can't even compete in today. So those people, they just have to put up with the price increase because there's no other competitor. But once T-Mobile gets there and they bring in savings and all these other ads that they've been showing on TV, then it's going to be tougher and tougher and tougher for Verizon to pull the pricing lever. I'm here to tell you guys, I'm very confident in that. Once T-Mobile really closes that network gap, the pricing lever is going to be very, very hard for Verizon to pull. So let me know your thoughts on this longer video. This was a long video. Let me know all of your guys' thoughts in the comments. I look forward to September 18th. I'm going to be tuned in. I took the day off already. I put that in for PTO. I'm going to be tuned in. I got my notes, everything. It's going to be a big day. And we will see what T-Mobile presents for the next 5 years. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.